In today's episode of Accessible Astrology.
It's very interesting. I have followed many astrologers and, oh, this is my thing. And I really resonate with this. Oh, and this, but now I resonate with this astrologer. And they have they have met me in that moment. And yet once that moment has been fulfilled, uh, I check in and but it is never the thing. And there have been moments in the 9+ years that I have been working with you where I've checked out, but never ever 100%.
Yeah.
I have always been connected and you consistently this method con- part of it's the method and part of it is the concreteness that you bring to the explanation that makes it not just something that is fulfilled in a moment, but it continues to flesh out the next context and the next context.
Welcome to the Accessible Astrology podcast, where we make astrology digestible and understandable. And we bridge the science of astrology with psychology and professional practice. This is a podcast where we learn all about the rising sign method, a revolutionary approach to astrology that I discovered and created over the course of 15 years, working with thousands of clients, hundreds of people in our groups, studying hundreds of thousands of charts, and working with tens of thousands of students. Here at Accessible Astrology and in the Rising Sign Method course and groups, it's all about learning to be the person you are instead of the person you think you're supposed to be. I am Eugenia Krok, and in this episode, I am revealing 3 ways to elevate your astrological practice, making it more professional and accessible while ensuring you're taken seriously by clients, peers, and other professionals alike. I guess Shannon looked to all the astrologers, all the spiritual teachers to find the answers about why she was the way she was and how she was the way she was. Through going through lots of different teachers and learning lots of different methods, it was, in fact, the rising sign method that she returned to again and again, and my approach to accessible astrology. Not only did Shannon learn so much about herself through this method, but she also learned about her in-laws, her children, her partnerships. So not only did she grow herself using the rising sign method, but the relationships in her life grew as well. In this episode, you're going to find out how she did it and how you can do it too. But first, whether you're just starting or a seasoned astrologer, these 3 principles will help set you apart. Number 1, professional ethics. First and foremost, establish and adhere to a strong code of ethics. This means having clear boundaries, respecting client confidentiality, and understanding the immense responsibility that comes with offering this type of guidance. Always ensure that your interpretations are based on sound knowledge and never give medical, legal, or psychological advice unless you're certified to do so. By holding yourself to a high standard, you not only protect your clients, but also strengthen the credibility of your practice in the field of astrology as a whole. I started my professional practice almost 15 years ago. I found astrology through my master's program in psychotherapy and counseling. And there was a lot I took away from my program, but the number one thing I took away from that program was the ethics of being a counselor. That is when I sit down with another and I share thoughts and feelings about their life and who they are and how I can provide service to help them. When we are in the position of counselor, ethics is the number one most important thing. This helps us avoid transference and countertransference. Now, these are all things I've taught in my free community and my classrooms throughout the years, is what those things mean and how to avoid them when working with your clients. At this stage, anyone can be an astrologer. Anyone can sit down and look at your chart. But if you are an astrologer who doesn't understand the baseline of ethics and astrology, there's danger because you can inject your bias, you can inject your own opinion, you can inject all of these things that don't really serve the client. It might become a session more about you than about them, or the session is entirely about them and you forget about your opinion. There's so much that can go wrong in a professional counseling environment, like being an astrologer, if you don't understand basic fundamentals and ethics. This is something I absolutely teach in my core curriculum course, which you can find in our classroom in our free community. Number two, and this really piggybacks on what I just talked about, leave yourself out of it. As an astrologer, it's essential to set aside your own experiences and personal biases. Focus on a client's chart, their life, and what the astrological patterns say about their journey. This objectively always allows you to provide clear and unbiased insights. While sharing some personal stories is always necessary because it helps clients hear other people's experiences that help them relate to their own, it's still very important that you remember your role is to guide and inform based on astrology, not to make the session about you and your own experiences only. This professional distance enhances trust and ensures your clients feel truly heard and seen. Now, I'm an astrologer who absolutely brings my own personal stories into my sessions. I do. But every time I bring a personal story into my session or into something I'm teaching, I'm thinking to myself the whole time, is this serving them or is this serving me? And don't get me wrong, I've been doing this 15 years. There have been sessions I have come off and said, man, I made that about me. But I'm always working to bring it back to the client. When I bring a personal story in, it's in the back of my head. How will this story serve them? How can they relate to this story so they can understand it in their own life, in their own world? Also, we are not here to judge another person. We are not here to judge them based on their ethnicity, their sexual preference, their political preference, their religious preference. A lot of times I see in the field of astrology, because it's really outside of the realm of professionalism, because there isn't accreditation and state and federal standards in this field, I see a lot of astrologers who are talking about their political opinion and saying who they want to vote for and talking about their religious beliefs and all of these things and judging the client or the student or the listener based on all of that. I believe a professional astrologer leaves that out of it. Why do all of my clients need to know who I voted for? Why do all my listeners need to know what I decide to do with my body, to know about all the personal details of my life? I am here to serve them to come into bigger and deeper understanding about themselves. So if I am stating my political preferences and biases, if I am stating my personal biases around my health and my well-being, I am saying to another, you can't trust me. You are not welcome here because you vote that way. You are not welcome. I don't care who you vote for, genuinely. I'm here to help you align to yourself, your higher truth. And that is what absolutely helps you individuate into the person you are instead of the person you think you're supposed to be or the person I think you're supposed to be, more importantly. Now, I'm recording this just after the 2024 USA presidential election, and I go through a 4-hour lecture in our free community. You can go download it today. You can go watch it, where I go through the election of who I think will become president. And more than going through the astrology of candidates' charts, I'm going through the bias in the field of astrology and spirituality and why predicting who's going to win based on a lot of people who have an opinion about who they want to win doesn't lend to credibility or trust when listening to those opinions. So I go through a lot of examples. If you want to see firsthand what not to do, if you want to be taken as a credible and professional astrologer, go watch that playback now in our free community. Number 3, be aware of how you present. Finally, consider how you present yourself, both in person and online. This includes everything from your communication style to your branding and social media presence. A polished, consistent, and professional image helps convey credibility. Avoid overly casual or woo woo language. If you're aiming for a more scientific and grounded audience, dress appropriately, speak appropriately. For sessions with clients, also dress appropriately and speak appropriately. And make sure your materials, whether they're reports, websites, or social media posts, reflect the high level of service you're offering. Now, this is one that I've always worked with throughout my career. I have gone from being very sloppy and still on my lives in my free community. I will be sloppy from time to time. You'll see me in sweats and my hair not done and all kinds of things like that. I have had a foul language on me throughout the years where I've cursed profanities over and over again. But as I grow and mature in this field, I realize that how I present myself completely shapes how people see me. It shapes my credibility. And so being really conscientious of how you show up in all of your media with your clients is going to be really important. If you show up to work with a client and you've got all these people in the background on Zoom, or you've got all these stinky smells in your office or whatever it might be, people might not take you seriously. And when people don't take you seriously as an astrologer, it brings down the entire field of astrology because it tells the collective this is not a profession and it's not worth being taken seriously. So, your duty, our duty, my duty is to help create and foster a professionalism around the world of astrology. And so, these three practices, upholding professional ethics, maintaining objectivity, and presenting yourself thoughtfully, can make a world of difference in how you are perceived as an astrologer. They not only build your reputation, but also contribute to a broader and more professional understanding of astrology. This is something that I pride myself in and I take very seriously, and I have in my 15 years as an astrologer. So if you would like to learn more about how I approach astrology from an ethical and a professional perspective, please consider joining our free community and accessing our classroom, the core curriculum, where you will learn so much about astrology, but most importantly, about the ethics of astrology and the importance of being an ethical astrologer. Right now, in addition to accessing our community totally for free, we are also offering our 2025 annual astrology outlook. This is something that I started way back in 2019 to get people prepared for 2020. And not that 25 is going to be just like 2020, but it's a big, big year. This is an annual outlook that myself and my husband, Tarek Adib, offer for you. We're going to go through a video report of each month. We're going to offer resources such as meditations, books, and videos. We also offer a journal that gives you plenty of information to get ready for every transit of every month with journal prompts. We get you ready for a very impactful year ahead and give you the tools and resources that we believe are going to help you as you move through a very powerful shifting year of 2025. So go ahead, access our community totally for free, meet like-minded individuals, have access to free courses on introduction to astrology if you're new to all of this, and in-depth courses like my core curriculum, and of course, access your 2025 annual outlook, jam-packed with loads of information to give you a powerful 2025. Okay, Shannon. Well, welcome to the Accessible Astrology podcast. I'm so happy you have volunteered your time to speak with me today about your experience working with me and your experience with the rising sign method and learning about being a Cancer rising. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eugenia. Happy to be with you,
Oh,
as
good.
always.
Good. Well, let's go ahead and start today with discussing what brought you into the field of astrology, what inspired you to look into it.
So, when I got divorced many years ago, the internet was just coming on, dial up. Some of us remember dial up. I was doing some kind of online tarot reading every day, and I would only take the cards that were positive and the messages from those and bring them into my day, just trying to to make some light within the struggle that I was living. That eventually led me to astrology because it felt like a more complete blueprint as opposed to, oh, this daily bit. This was a lifelong blueprint. And one of the astrologers I was following, you were kind of connected with him, and I he was just a bridge to you. When I connected with you, it was like, oh, I think it was your psychology background and the fact that you are a detailed oriented research, facts, patterns, how concrete that felt.
Mm.
So this seemingly uh, woo-woo field of astrology felt concrete, like a blueprint for life. It just felt real working
Mhm.
with you.
I love that. And
Mhm.
what would you say is the main change that has occurred pre-astrology in your world and post-astrology? And maybe even specifically just some of the astrology we've learned together. What would you say was your context for life before this information and then after?
My context for life was this internal sense that I always knew that was my next step. Did I know anything about that? No. I just knew, oh, this is my next step. It feels like my next step. I don't have to have the research around that or investigate it. I just know this is my next step until I get what I need from that. And then that's my next step. And what which I felt a little bit like a failure
Mm,
because everything that I jumped into, because I was jumping into it internally, intuitively, I would be excited about and say, oh, this is my thing. Only some of that information was what I needed in my tool chest for the ultimate thing. But I didn't have a context for that. So
mm,
it just felt like, oh, I'm telling everyone this is my thing, but it's not. Nobody's going to
mm.
believe me after 5 things.
Right.
With astrology, I could see I'm gathering this, and this makes sense that I'm gathering this. And I can see that in X amount of time, I'm going to be gathering that.
Mm,
And there's a context for the arena that these tools are going to be used in.
mm. So it brought context. Yeah. And would you say all astrology's brought you context, or would you say my approach has brought more? I'm just curious.
So that's a really good question. It's very interesting. I have followed many astrologers and, oh, this is my thing. And I really resonate with this. But now I resonate with this astrologer. And they have met me in that moment. And yet, once that moment has been fulfilled, uh, I check in, but it is never the thing. There have been moments in the 9+ years that I have been working with you where I've checked out, but never 100%.
Yeah.
I have always been connected. This method, con- part of it's the method, and part of it is the concreteness that you bring to the explanation
Mm,
that makes it not just something that is fulfilled in a moment, but it continues to flesh out the next context and the next context.
mhm. And so over these years, as you mentioned, we've been working together for
Mm-hmm.
9+ years. And so you've seen my evolution as an astrologer as well. And recently you joined our rising sign groups, which has been I feel the culmination of all of the research and data I've been compiling for 15 years, working with clients, seeing the stories, being on the ground, doing the work, doing the research, giving concrete analysis to client work, and then eventually putting together clients into these 12 groups of rising signs. What would you say the rising sign method has brought to you in relationship to all the astrology you've learned and all the information you've learned? What would you say, and I have actually like two parts of this, that the information is given you is on your rising sign, but then also having a group of individuals who are also Cancer rising. What would you say those two experiences have brought to you or changed your perspective of yourself and just astrology in general?
The individual cancer rising groups, it's because there are different ages
Hmm.
and different stages of life we're all going through. It's very interesting because I can see a reflection of, oh, when I was in that stage, I absolutely get where you are.
Mm.
And even though I am not in that particular season or stage, it's like the broth of the soup is the same.
Mm.
The energy is the same. I'm just taking it in this stage. And
Right.
so there's something very comforting about that. Uh, and I also feel, even if I'm not profusely contributing, I feel like my presence there and the energy that I hold, I've been in that place. And you are absolutely in the right place at the right time. And
Right.
it's okay. I feel
Mm.
like I get to bring that.
Mm.
Damn, if I could have had that when I was in those stages,
Yeah.
how much easier that would be, which is why I'm here in astrology. And as far as the courses go, it gives more context to what I am going through, what I have going through. But more importantly than that, it allows me to the people in the important people in my life, like my daughters and my husband and my ex-husband. Damn, I wish I had his birth information. Um, it helps me to understand them and what they're going through. It helps me to feel more confident about not trying to save them, because I
Right.
know that they don't need saving, that they are on their own course. The waters are turbulent and the boat is rocking, and they are going to be fine. They're learning what they need to learn. They are not me, and they're not going to learn it my way. So the
Mhm.
courses have really helped to flesh that understanding for me.
Right. Oh, that's so cool. So recognizing that you've been given a path, you realize that so have they, and that it's different and it's okay and it's right.
Absolutely.
I would say that is definitely one of the most powerful pieces of this information is when I watch individuals get this information and they say, "Oh, wait, so I'm, let's say, Taurus rising, and oh, so my childhood was supposed to look like that." You're like, yeah, that's exactly right. Your childhood was actually supposed to look like that because look, all your other Taurus rising childhoods look like that. And your relationships, they look like that. And your work and your home and these areas of your life, they look like that for that reason. And that's exactly what it is. That's the biggest piece of this work to me. I feel like there's a difference between what you want and what you need. And I feel like the rising sign makes all the difference because a lot of what we want isn't always what we actually need. So I might want, I use the analogy all the time in the group. I might want to be 4'8" gymnast, the Olympiad gymnast, and might have envy of Simone Biles. The Olympics were just on that she can, and I want to do that. But God gave me a 6 foot tall, large white woman body in this lifetime, and I have to work with that. And I feel like the rising sign method gives you that. It gives you, even though I might want that thing, that might not actually be what I need. And if I can just own who I am, then what I want might actually also turn into what I need. Like I can marry those two together so that living like in that authentic path that I've been given.
And I think that I think that what you are doing is like the antidote to social media. Social media presents
Yes,
this is what I need to be. This is what I'm supposed to be.
totally.
And astrology lets you know, maybe not. And it's okay. Maybe this is what you're meant to be. And then you get to go, oh, yeah, yeah, this feels, whew, whew, okay. I don't have to be that.
Totally.
And they can be that.
Totally. Yeah. And that path will come with its strengths and its challenges as mine does, but at least I'm on my path. I'm accepting it.
And speaking of Kath, what I love about the length of time we've worked together
Mm.
is I can watch you. I mean, it's the perfect example. I have watched you go through your challenges in life. And when you're talking about your life, you can be all over the place. Then this transformation happens
Mhm.
when you start talking astrology, the
Right.
blueprint of things. Then it's like everything comes together and
Mhm.
you settle in and you become this grounded, centered deliverer of this blueprint.
Mm.
It's so impressive. Anyone who may not resonate with the season that you're in,
Mm.
if they allow the grace of personal season to float and stay to the part where you ground and center into the blueprint,
Mm.
that's the meat and potatoes.
Right.
What that has done for me is give myself grace for my personal chaos
Mm.
and then come back to my blueprint.
Mm.
You kind of mirror that for me.
Mm. A lot of that is based on my rising sign, believe it or not.
I do believe that, having been exposed as much as I have.
Yeah, and just how I walk through the world and how I show up, it's a very you see it.
I do. And I understand it better now because of what you have gathered and how you present.
Mm, mm. So let me ask you, with the information specifically that you've learned about your rising sign from the rising sign method material and the groups, what has been the biggest aha for you from learning the information?
I think it's that I'm not less than.
Mm, mm,
When we compare ourselves to someone on another path, we can feel less than. And what this does is it allows me to feel like I am filling my own cup.
I love that. I think I'll never forget there was one gal in our mutable rising course because throughout the years we've been in our individual rising courses and then we've been our modalities. So whether it's cardinal, fixed, or mutable, and then we've also been our element rising groups, water versus air, fire, and earth. I'll never forget when the mutables were all meeting. One girl said, I've been living a fixed rising life my whole life, but I'm a mutable rising. I've been trying to live up to the standards of the fixed rising life. And that's just not me, Jack. It is such a liberation because you do, as a, like, say, a mutable rising, you look at these individuals who, they got married and they, have kind of done the same thing day in and day out. And you think, wow, how did you do that? How did you pull that off? Like, you go to the gym every morning at 6 o'clock or whatever. And I can't operate from that place. And whoa, thank God, right? That's okay. I accept that my days are going to look very different than a fixed rising, than a cardinal rising. And that relief, I think I've watched a lot of people relieved to realize that I've been trying to live in a fixed rising world or a cardinal rising world or a mutable rising world. Say you're fixed rising and your mother's a mutable rising and you've been trying to work your way through life as a mutable rising mom, but you're a fixed rising child. It doesn't matter which one it is. It absolutely allows you to recognize, oh, no, this is how I move, and that's okay.
And this is how they move, and that's
100%.
okay.
Totally.
It allows
Yes.
you to recognize this is me and this is how you do it. Sometimes we come together and complement each other, and that's great. And then other times I recognize that you are just driving me crazy, even though you're my best friend, that I can only spend so much time with you.
I'm so glad you brought that part up. When I started researching these groups and bringing everyone together, one of the biggest changes for me was realizing my mother is a fixed rising and I'm not. I have a lot of grace now and a lot of forgiveness and appreciation that that's just what works for her. That was very hard for me as a mutable rising kiddo, but that's okay. Now as an adult, I get to mutable my way through this world, or air rising. I'm an air rising way my way through this world, and Gemini, so you get to really finite. Okay, so I am this very unique path within all these 12 different paths.
Mhm.
Mm-mm. What would you say was the biggest misconception you had about your rising sign before learning this information?
I'm going to sound however I sound, but I don't necessarily have expectations when I enter into something.
Mm,
This is this is my thing for now. I didn't have any expectations. For me, the biggest thing was context to understand others, and
mm,
understanding others and giving them grace just allowed me to give myself grace.
mm.
It, it, I needed to focus outside myself first, understand other people, and then realize, oh, yeah, I'm one of those other people too. I didn't have a misconception because, if quite frankly, I didn't have a conception.
That's been the biggest thing I've heard while talking to people is they didn't even know the risings what it was. That's been
Mhm.
probably the biggest one. They're like, I knew my sun sign and I knew I had a rising sign, but I had no idea that it mattered. I've heard that a lot from people. And then switching over to this idea that maybe the rising sign is the most important aspect of your chart is very different than what people are used to.
With the other astrologers that I have and still follow, they talk rising sign,
Mm,
and yet they don't have the perspective that you have with the
mm,
analysis and information gathering. When they present rising sign things, it doesn't feel deep or profound.
right.
And I've come to understand, maybe that's a better answer to your question. I've come to understand how deep and how profound this
Mm.
really is.
Mm. Yeah, it's a game changer. When I figured this out for myself, it changed my life significantly, accepting my rising sign and the significance of it. What would you recommend to somebody like on the street? You're just walking down the street and you bump into a Cancer rising. What would you say to somebody who might be looking for tribe or looking for connection or looking for clarity about their path and how the rising sign and the groups could potentially help them?
I think for me, when I speak with folks astrologically, I will share bits and pieces. Those folks that have the bandwidth to understand more about themselves are asking me.
Mhm.
And then I'd say, ooh, this is the thing.
Mm, mm,
And would just share.
mm. That's
Not
nice.
not quite the answer you want, but probably, but that's how I operate.
And would you say that the groups are helpful being with
So
people?
helpful.
Right.
So helpful.
Mhm.
What I am finding right now, as we're all in this great change and transition, people are, so myself included, self-absorbed and consumed by all the internal chaos as they're letting go of the old world and coming into this new world. And those that are working full time or whatever, either they don't have the bandwidth or they are so hungry and needy. And I think just putting this out, just energetically, the more of us that are understanding this information, it just kind of happens magnetically that more and more people will be drawn to this.
Mm-hmm.
I just believe that because it is so powerful. And there has to be enough change within someone to be ready for this. And then
Mm-hmm.
once they do, the more people will be ready.
Yeah.
This is just going to explode in the next year for you. I don't know exactly how, but every fiber of my being, having gone through this evolution with you and experiencing what I do, intuitively, it's like, poof, this year is going to be explosive.
Right. Well, that's exciting.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, I think that, you know, way back in my master's degree, I had a professor say to me that one of the most healing experiences you can have is to get got. Like you
Amen.
said, you feel really alone. We aren't, we're mostly on our screens now. And even if you have a lot of friends, I don't think my friends get me. They're different rising signs, and my husband gets me. We're both Gemini risings. I get gotten by him a lot. But when I go into my Gemini rising group, I just feel gotten. It's like a soft place to land. The struggles I'm having, they often will be having, or we found out something about the culture of our family that raised us, the types of like aunts and uncles we have were really similar. And I remember as a kid feeling really weird about like that part of my life, for example. And then I talked to them and said, oh no, that's exactly what was going on in our house. And, my siblings are like this, and oh, my struggles with money and all of those different layers of it. It's such a remarkable thing to feel that they get it. They get me. I'm gotten, and I'm not a weirdo. And as much as I believe I'm a unique person, and I absolutely am, everybody is extremely unique within the rising sign, but in the end, I'm not actually that unique. There's something about that is very comforting to me to know that I'm part of a tribe that we get it. We get the same. We get it. We see the world the same. We have the same perspectives. It's a nice feeling to just get gotten.
I was trying to look up to see what my son-in-law's rising sign is because he and I could not be more opposite. I see aspects of my daughter that I don't get, and I know that those aspects eh, resonate with her husband and him with her. He's that rising sign that you talk about that is so interesting. Um, you know which one I'm talking about. And I can't wait to learn more, especially
Yeah.
after being the weekend with him. There is
Mhm.
so much to understand about you that I don't.
Mhm.
I'm really looking forward because, of course, it's been my daughters and my grandchildren and my husband. Now I'm ready to understand
Mm.
a little bit better this one. I
Mm.
can't wait till that comes around.
That opportunity, yeah, and it's a
That
coming.
opportunity.
It's coming
Yay.
for sure.
And that's the beauty of things. You don't have to, with this method, I personally don't find him that interesting. And I am interested to know what is interesting because
Mm,
I know that it's there. It's
mm,
palpable,
mm,
the knowledge that something is interesting about him.
mhm.
And I can't wait to learn that.
Yeah.
So I don't have to just not like him. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I go into these 12 groups, and there are certain groups I just I'm there, and I like being there. I like connecting with them and everything, but man, do I not understand how they do the world. It almost grates on me, like there's some groups that just don't talk, and I just don't get it. They do all of their communicating through text, the DM and the chat while we're together.
Mhm.
Makes absolutely no sense to me. There's other groups, they just fight over each other to talk, and that like, I'm like, that's not so it is interesting. I have really discovered that there's certain rising signs that yes, it's very easy and we flow well and it works, and there's other rising signs, it's just oil and vinegar, right? Or oil and water is it? Uh, we just don't mix. We just like, and it's a nice, and again, if you're younger and you're in the dating world and these things, I think that's extremely helpful. Or just knowing, okay, I am married to a mutable rising, but I'm a fixed rising. Okay, so that is my wife or husband. This is okay. I have to either accept this or not, but I have to accept that this is how this person will be. That's not how I do it. Can we make this work? The point you've made in this entire conversation that I think is amazing is that it's not just about learning about yourself, but it's really about learning the other and accepting the other as much as we learn to
Absolutely.
accept ourselves. I think that's huge.
That has been the biggest for
Right.
me.
I love that. That's such a great insight. Well, Shannon, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about your experience with me and the Rising Sign Method. And I'll look forward to seeing you in our next groups.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Eugenia.
Sure thing. Mwah.
Bye-bye.